Well, thank you for interviewing with us today. What's your name? If you can
And yeah,
introduce yourself.
Andrew Wade.
Andrew Wade, what
Yep.
do you do? And, share a bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so I am currently the assistant coach for the men's program at Wheaton College.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And tell me more about, so what we're trying to do is build a UPSL team at the
Yep.
moment in Wheaton. Share your philosophy on like what you want to see in a club. Would you think it's going to be good? Like,
Yeah.
what do you think about the soccer landscape so far?
Yeah, I think the like startup club model is a lot of fun, and it's also really challenging. It's kind of like somewhat saturated landscape in some ways, and that there's a lot of young owners that are trying to build up clubs. And I think the key thing for whether it's a USL two club or a UPSL club is for there to be like really meaningful fan engagement. I think that's usually what is a key driver of whether or not a club is successful. I think also like a club's partnerships with local youth clubs is also really helpful as well, so that there's kind of a pipeline of players and a pipeline of interest from the community, to make sure that it's not just kind of a UPSL club out on its own, just
Mhm.
trying to survive based on like player dues and stuff like that. There needs to be some outside partnerships in the way of sponsorships, as well as kind of a pipeline of fan engagement.
What do you think? What do you think good fan engagement looks like to you? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think as far as like being tied to a youth club, I think having events that are geared towards young players getting out. I've seen a lot of clubs go kind of like the family friendly route, where it's a lot of you know players being mascots, walking teams out onto the pitch, having players, youth players being able to participate at halftime or before the game on the pitch, getting fans into seats that way. I think that's one route. There's also then the kind of like more like trying to create a real, almost European style like fan culture, where there's kind of like you get a core of like some diehard ultra fans
Hmm.
that try to
Yeah.
travel with the team, or bring an atmosphere, whether that's kind of in stadium, fans, drums, music, that kind of draws people as well, that might be in a local community that have seen uh, you know European football fandom and are attracted to it and would
Hmm.
love to be part of a local club,
Yeah.
that's kind of like a match going experience, but don't have an outlet for that. So
Yeah.
I think I've seen clubs go that route as well, and are able to make really good money via alcohol sales and
Hmm.
stuff like that as well. I think
Yeah.
that's, to be frank, that's a big part of how clubs have made it, is being in an atmosphere where they can also sell alcohol, sell food, do concessions at a high level as well, so that it's maybe easy entrance into the stadium, but then they're
Right.
making money in other ways.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. What's your highest level of football you've played? And if you were to talk about, what is a winning tactic like? Since we're exploring that, I had the vision. Have you seen Blue Lock before, or have you heard about Blue Lock?
No.
It's like a Japanese anime for soccer, but
Okay.
basically their formation is it's 11 strikers on the pitch, and they
Gotcha.
just do like 11 strikers, but it's still in the 4-4-2. But everyone's a striker. But if you were to like coach a team, you're the assistant coach, and you've played some football. What kind of tactics are you, like a tiki taka kind of guy, or what's your philosophy?
Yeah, I would say I usually like coach the game in a kind of philosophy that's called like logic of the game, or that's what I call it.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously everyone in the game is trying to play football to score goals,
Yeah.
but I orient the way to think about the game by saying, breaking the pitch pretty much into vertical and horizontal zones, and then
Like Pep. Yeah.
organizing those zones by priority. So, for example, if you have a wide area, a central area, and another wide area, and then you maybe have thirds of the pitch, the
Mm-hmm.
the final third and the central area is where goals come from. So obviously, if you maybe label that zone A,
Yeah.
you're trying to get the ball into A. But if you can't get the ball into A, what is the next best position to have the ball in? Well, it would be the wide areas in the final third. So those zones would be B and B. Then if you can't get the ball into B, you'd want to get the ball into a zone C, which would be the middle third and in the central area of the pitch. So kind of prioritizing areas of the pitch by saying, what is the success rate that we're able to play into a certain zone? And then you almost organize, what pass or which action on the field is aligned with the success rate that you require. So, for example, if you're going to build out of the back, if you can do that without taking on risk, and you can do it at a high enough success rate that you're not taking on risk without kind of the reward of getting the ball up the pitch under control, then that makes sense. But if you're only, able to connect at a certain low percentage when building, then if you can play the ball further up the pitch without, having the downside risk and achieving the same rough outcome of maybe say 50% ball control when you play a forward pass, then it doesn't make any sense to be building and taking on all that kind of downside risk. So I'm always talking about kind of that risk reward and thinking about it both, kind of big picture in terms of like where goals come from at like a global football scale, but then also looking at those percentages within a team and given the personnel you have. So, for example, if you have wide players that have really low ball retention and maybe don't serve the ball in, then maybe it makes sense to be skipping from zone C direct into A as opposed to going C to B to A. So thinking about the game that way, I think, is really useful for players. It gives kind of an agreement structure to the team as to how we're going to go trying to, break teams down in possession.
Yeah, no, that's really cool.
Yeah.
What do you look for in a player when players are trying out for teams?
Yeah, I think kind of the key things are like, does the player have like the baseline athleticism required to compete at a really high level? I think the game, continues to get more and more athletically demanding, and so having players that are kind of like robust enough athletically to cope with the demands of the game in terms of ground coverage and ability to be quick enough to win duels in and out of possession is really important. And then beyond that, we're also looking for guys that have technical capacity to develop. But I'd say the athletic piece needs to be there because, especially when you're developing a team from scratch, you need to have the ability to compete in games, and then you can order your tactics and things from that. If you don't have the athletic piece, then it's really you're kind of hamstrung in terms of what you can try to do. It's I'd rather be in an athletic team that's improving technically than be a technical team that can't improve athletically very much. So
that's true.
What
are your thoughts on the World Cup, this World Cup and everything? Who'd you support? What are your thoughts on the overall game?
Yeah, it was I think, fantastic World Cup. I really enjoyed it. I'm actually wearing an Argentina-Switzerland shirt.
Yeah,
so I was able to make it out to the quarterfinal in Kansas City to see Julian Alvarez's extra time winner, which was pretty sweet.
But the finals was underwhelming, right?
Final was underwhelming, I think.
Okay, here's a question. Do you think Argentina played poorly or Spain played well? Because you saw the stats, right? It's like 0 shots on target, 2 shots on target.
Yeah, I would say, definitely both. I think Spain is a team that is just suffocating and has the ability to genuinely pass teams, to death. And I think it's not always the most exciting brand of football because they're really just content to keep the ball, especially if Spain scores the first goal, they're probably, the team that's best in the world at managing a 1-0 lead because of their ability to keep the ball and their players' bravery to keep the ball and their technical ability. And Argentina played poorly, but I think that matchup was always going to be really bad for them, especially if they conceded the first goal. If Argentina could have nicked a goal, then I think it would have suited them because they could have defended and then maybe broken out on the counterattack occasionally. But
Yeah.
um, they really just, especially as the game unfolded in the first half, you could tell at first they were pretty much playing to make it to halftime 0-0, and then once the second half started, they were kind of waiting to try to make it to the end of the game at 0-0, and
Yeah.
then they were waiting for penalties. So that's not really a good way to approach 120 minutes, is kind of hanging on.
100%.
And so yeah, Argentina has some players that are press resistant that you would like to have thought that they could have kept the ball better when they did regain it.
Yeah.
Their central midfield players are technically good, but they didn't have an outlet ball. So I think Scaloni playing just one center forward, limits them. And then when Messi doesn't have the ball, it's he's a passenger defensively, which doesn't help when you're playing the best team in the world at keeping the ball.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
I think last question for you is, when this this team comes out, and the semi-pro team comes out, what are the top 3 or 5 things you would want to see in a team to make you want to watch a game or play for it? I guess those are 2 different things, but let's put it on a fan perspective. Like, what would make you want to watch?
Yeah, I think having like real fan engagement with the players, I think is important. I think having a really strong social media presence, that is kind of compelling and different, that stands out, whether that's player interviews or getting fan engagement, making the club feel like a real thing, as opposed to kind of a tossed together group of guys that are playing, is really important. So I think there's an element of kind of, a club has to fake it till it makes it a little bit, in the sense that you need to make yourself look like a real thing. And then obviously you need on-field results as well.
Right.
Because no one wants to,
watch a losing
tie
club.
themselves to a losing team long term. So
Perfect.
I think those are, the key things. Obviously, if you can bring in a group of players and also have a real identity in terms of the way you're going to play, I think that's also exciting as well. If you can play a really high pressing, attractive brand of attacking football, then that's easier for fans to get behind as well. So bringing in players and having a coach that has a set identity is also important, I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
really
of course.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.